Hey, Larken Rose here, feeling the need to offend some people who would imagine themselves to be my allies. No, Massie shouldn't have any power at all. Nobody should ever vote for him for anything. No, Rand Paul shouldn't have any power at all. Nobody should ever vote for him or anyone else for any position of political authority ever. Trouble is, so many people, as I've talked about before, judge what should be based in comparison to whatever there is now. So if Massie is out there saying, I'm against this authoritarian, this authoritarian, this authoritarianism, and you're against those types of statist BS, it's easy to think he must be on my side. No, he's not. He is absolutely 100% a statist. Thing that brought this up, made me think of doing this video, is a comment under one of the videos I just did on YouTube. I pointed out 0 Republicans and 0 Democrats give a crap about the Constitution. None of them. None of them anywhere at all in any way, shape, or form. And somebody said, well, I mean, Massie does and Rand Paul sort of does or something. I said, no, they absolutely do not. The fact that they want fewer arbitrary, unconstitutional, authoritarian kinds of bullcrap isn't the same as actually being constitutionalist. Now, gonna throw this in again. I'm not a constitutionalist. The Constitution was authoritarian bullshit. It created the biggest authoritarian empire the world has ever known because it was too authoritarian, despite the fact that it describes a ruling class that is trivial and minuscule to what the monstrosity has grown into today, which is kind of proof that limited government doesn't work. But let's just start with the test of constitutional. Okay, if there was somebody in Congress or somebody running for Congress who actually believed in the Constitution, they would advocate that Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare immediately be ended right now. There's no justification for any of that. Throw it out the window. By the way, the income tax as enforced would be thrown out the window. And ATF, FBI, DEA, anything like federal law enforcement will be thrown out the window because there's no authority for any of that. Almost all of the military, which is a standing army, would be immediately abolished. There's like provisions for a navy to protect the sea borders in the Constitution. Again, I'm not saying the Constitution is legitimate. I'm saying if somebody actually did believe in that, they would be against pretty much everything the federal government does. And all laws having to do with basically anything. If you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, you see the things that the federal government is authorized to do when it comes to the states, which is almost nothing. It's like having postal routes. And like, that's about it. There's a couple other things. There's things like, well, piracy laws on the high seas, because the entire purpose was, well, we have a bunch of states with state governments, and we don't want a massive central thing taking over everything, but it'll handle a few things, and that turned into a giant catastrophe anyway. But the people who pretend to give a crap about the Constitution, the vast majority don't. They just don't want it violated quite as often or in as many ways as your average Democrat or Republican. That's not the same thing as actually advocating the Constitution. So whenever I hear any Republican or Democrat talk about, this is against the Constitution, just shut the hell up. You don't believe in that at all. In any way, shape, or form. Oh, this is a Democrats out there, this violation of due process, this is a violation of the Constitution. So is literally everything you ever vote for in any election. All the welfare bullshit, there's no constitutional foundation for any of that. For any federal spending on any of the things you want. So don't pretend to give a crap about the Constitution. Now, what you could say is, in principle, I think it's horrible to punish people with no due process. Yeah, you'd be right. But you don't get to fall back on the Constitution when you believe in exactly none of it. You crap on the 9th and 10th Amendments on a daily basis. During the COVID circus, you crapped on all of it. And now that Trump is crapping on all of it, you can pretend to be righteously indignant about it, just like the conservatives did when COVID was going on. How this is a violation of blah, 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 blah. You mean like the violations you cheer for when it's in the name of national security, or the war on drugs, or all the police state bullshit and the federalization and militarization of the police that you advocate, and the giant unconstitutional standing army that you on the right advocate? None of you give a crap about the Constitution. But to go one step further, heck with the Constitution, because it's not pro-freedom in any way, shape, or form. It pretended to create a limited ruling class, which was not in any way limited. Now it's a zillion times worse than King George III ever was to the colonists here. So to pretend that, yeah, that was a smashing success, the limited government created by the Constitution is not at all limited. And that was the real world outcome of the Constitution. So what the Constitution actually leads to is very different from what the Constitution describes. But zero people in public power want what the Constitution describes either. Zero Republicans and zero Democrats want what the Constitution describes. There may be some obscure constitutionalist in some office somewhere saying, yeah, all of this is bogus, you're not allowed to do any of it, which Ron Paul was. That's why he was Dr. No. It's like, yep, I'm going to vote against this. No, because there's no provision in the Constitution that authorizes it. I'll vote against literally every single thing that Congress ever proposes because all of them are unconstitutional, and I'll sit here and say no and get outvoted and lose anyway, and accomplish nothing. But this applies not just to the Constitution, more broadly and more importantly, it applies to the concept of freedom. Whenever you have somebody who's righteously railing against a particular kind of authoritarianism, and so you sort of emotionally want to go, they're an ally, they're on my side. Like, use a little caution, use a little critical thinking maybe, and say, okay, are they actually pro-freedom, or are they just against this particular type of authoritarian idiocy? And a shining example is all the Trumpites who were against this corruption over here and this government thing and all this stuff that we're going to label socialism. And then Trump literally nationalizing industry. Now government's going to own 10% of this giant company that's supposed to be private. And we're advocating handouts, the Doge dividends thing, and then it's resurfaced again, floating a different kind of buying influence by way of handing out stolen loot. So they're not even anti-socialist. They're just anti-socialism when the Democratic Party does it. When they do it, oh no, this is giving back we're going to describe it differently and pretend that makes us principled and pro-freedom. See, this is the problem with statism. Once you accept the premise that there's such a thing as a legitimate ruling class, you can't have principles. It doesn't work. I don't just mean, oh, you'll probably be corrupted. I mean, you've already accepted the paradigm that says that those people over there have the right to take our money and boss us around. You're anti-freedom. You're already anti-freedom. It doesn't matter which things you want people robbed to fund. It doesn't matter which things you want government violence used to control and which things you would allow. That's just bickering over what you hope the master will let us do and how much money you hope the master will let us keep. You've already accepted having a master. You've already accepted that it is no longer and should not be the choice of the individual what he's going to do and how much of what he earns he gets to keep. You already gave that away. You already conceded the only point that matters, which is somebody else has the right to rule us. Now let's bicker and whine at each other about what we hope the master's going to do. How we hope he's going to use his power. Well, I want him to use power to stomp on those guys that I don't like. And I get all righteously indignant when he uses his power to stomp on me and steal my money. You hypocritical dumbass. This is the result. Every Democrat, every Republican, you're all being hypocritical dumbasses. This is the result of accepting the premise of having a ruling class and then getting all bitter when the ruling class that you approved of rules you. That's what ruling classes do. You probably shouldn't have cheered for the existence of a ruling class if you didn't want to be ruled. And that's why the only principled people there are, politically speaking, are anarchists, which is anti-political. It's, no political power at all. Political authority is bogus, start to finish. The concept of political civil government is bogus, start to finish. That is the only way to be pro-freedom and to be consistent and to be principled at all. I don't even mean it's the only right position to have, although it is. I mean, you are a hypocrite if you believe in government. You are an unprincipled walking contradiction if you believe in government at all, regardless of what flavor you might want. And so whenever voters and political parasites and their supporters get all indignant that authoritarian power was used in a way that they don't like, part of me says, okay, good. There are limits. At least there are limits to what they think the ruling class should do. But holy crap, do you not recognize you are cheering for the problem and then whining about the inevitable symptoms of the problem? You advocate the disease, which is statism, and then you whine about the symptoms of the disease, which is your money gets stolen and your life gets forcibly interfered with. I just wanted government to rob other people and forcibly interfere with other people's lives, like those Mexicans who don't have pieces of paper saying they're allowed to be here. Okay, dumbass. You've already accepted the premise there's a ruling class that gets to kick you around and control you and steal your money. If it doesn't do what you want, tough crap. Why would you think it was going to be up to you? You're appointing a ruler above yourself. Why the hell did you ever imagine that ruler was going to answer to you? You specifically put him in a position where he can rule you. They rule you and all your neighbors and everybody else and people you don't know. Several 100 million strangers. You put them there. You played the game which says, I accept the premise that I am the subject of a ruling class and that others have the right to rule me. Now I'm going to whine at the master for being unfair. You've already endorsed your own slavery. Like, it's a little late to be like principled and outraged at violations of freedom. You're against freedom. You are absolutely anti-freedom. Yeah, sure, you want your freedom. Whoop-de-doo. Sure, every slave also wished that if somebody was going to be whipped, it would be other slaves. It's not a virtue. It's not a principle. That's just self-interest. Everybody has that. Every statist has that. The slimiest people in the world have that. They don't want to suffer. They don't mind if other people suffer, but they don't want to suffer themselves. That's every voter in the world. Every voter in the world votes to have his ideas, his preferences, his priorities, his interests forcibly imposed on others by way of government coercion. That's what voting is. And if you then whine about it when, somebody else's guy got in, or even my guy got in, but then he's doing things I didn't want, maybe you shouldn't have given him power over you, dumbass. But it's to watch the entire political spectacle and spectrum be this completely worthless discussion. Republicans and Democrats arguing with each other is completely worthless. There's not a shred of principle on either side. There's nothing resembling an actual coherent concept or idea. It's just bickering over what the master does. But you've both conceded that there should be a master. So you're both anti-freedom in every single way. And so I know it's tempting, and there is the good side that, okay, at least there are limits on how much you're going to be a bootlicker. If somebody's like, I'm objecting to this new thing that government's doing, that Trump's doing, or the Democrats are doing, or whatever, I'm not going to put up with this. Okay, I'm glad if you have a line somewhere. But all these people imagining themselves to be freedom fighters as they try to get a slightly different flavor of authoritarian subjugation of humanity imposed on everyone they know. Like, you have no room to complain. You have no principles. You are in no fundamental way any different from the people you're screaming at and whining about. The only difference is you lost. You played the game hoping big bad government was going to stomp on people the way you wanted it to, and rob people the way you wanted it to, and hand out stolen loot the way you wanted it to, and you didn't get your way. So you already conceded to that game. You already accepted that premise and that paradigm. Who the hell are you to complain about the outcome, the inevitable outcome, of a game that you endorsed? I'm all bitter because I lost the game. Maybe you shouldn't have endorsed and legitimized the game to begin with. So it's kind of amazing watching so many cheerleaders of authoritarian evil playing the victim card. Oh, poor us. Look what's being done to us. Let me guess. It's exactly what you wanted done to other people and voted to have government do to other people. You're just whiny and in victim mentality because it was done to you. If some Trumpite gets his home invaded and dragged off and put in a cage and no charges, he didn't commit a crime, he didn't do anything wrong, is that unjust? Yeah. Is that evil? Yeah. Should that not happen? Absolutely it shouldn't. Did they vote for exactly that to happen to other people? Yes, they did. Are they absolutely hypocrites if they pretend this is an outrage? In principle, I'm against this. Yes, they are, because in principle, you're not against that. You just didn't want it happening to you. But that's true of every cockroach. It's true of every rat. They try to avoid pain for themselves, whether they give a crap about anybody else, including their fellow cockroaches and rats, or not. Is that a virtue? You being victimized by the machine that you cheered for doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you an idiot, and it makes you a victim of your own idiocy. Stop advocating that. Yeah, government still shouldn't be doing that to you. It shouldn't be doing it to the people that you wanted it doing it to. It shouldn't exist at all. So it's not that you should be violently oppressed by an authoritarian ruling class. It's that for you to pretend that that's some grave injustice when you wanted them doing that to others. Democrat, Republican, I don't care. All voters. This is all of you. Oh, how could this happen to me? Well, golly gee, how did that big authoritarian monster get there? Oh, you voted for it, didn't you? Yeah, but I voted for a slightly different flavor of authoritarian collectivism. Well, whoop-de-doo. That's the master. You're not. You're the subject. It decides what to do. That's what a master does, dumbass. You put it there. You gave it power. You played the game. You legitimized the circus. Now you're on the losing end? It's your own damn fault. Still shouldn't happen to you. Still unjust. The difference is anarchists and voluntarists can actually be principled while pointing out the injustice. You can't. Because you're just complaining that the evil you cheered for came around to bite you in the ass. Maybe learn your damn lesson and stop cheering for evil against anyone. Maybe adopt the extremist idea of don't tread on anyone. Until then, you're going to deserve what you get. When you keep cheering for authoritarianism and then keep being on the losing end of authoritarianism. Eventually people will learn, but in the meantime, It's a little bit frustrating watching all the people imagining themselves to be victims of this horrible injustice. Didn't you vote for that exact thing to happen to your neighbor? Like last week? Yeah, but now it's happening to me, and that's just such a tragedy. It's a tragedy when it happens the way you voted for, too, dumbass. And until you figure that out, until you can extend your empathy to other people, until you can actually, whether you claim to be a Christian or not, abide by the thing of do unto others as you would have done unto you, until you stop advocating the subjugation of other people, I don't want to hear you bitching about it when you get subjugated. Maybe make sure that you're not a cheerleader for evil before you go out there whining about what a poor victim you are of this week's evil. Stop empowering it if you want it to stop stomping on you.